Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk today about intellectual development from 1 to 3. Think about what children can do in the play school. So if you remember in infant development, we talked about brain development, and we talked about how they're learning as they pick up senses. They're able to pull those senses together to make connections, brain connections. Those neurons are all connecting together. Well, that's really neuroscience, the study of the brain. And we learned that connections in the brain are formed and control actions and thinking tasks. There's 4 main parts to intelligence. The first is to interpret and understand everyday situations. What is happening today? How is it happening? Why is it happening? Use prior experiences when faced with new ones. So you look at what you've done before and it helps you make decisions on how to handle new ones. Your capacity to learn. Obviously, not everybody has the same capacity to learn. And then heredity and environment also shape our intelligence, just like our capacity to learn. Some people have more capacity than others due to their heredity and then due to the things that they've been around as a young child. There are 4 main methods of learning that are used throughout our life, but specifically start in toddler time. And the first is incidental learning. This is unplanned learning. I like to think about it as accidental learning. So once you have figured out, then you try it again and see if it works again. So for example, you lean up against a light switch and it turns on. And you say, oh, that's how you turn it on. And you try it again and it turns the light off and then you turn the light on. Maybe you've been around toddlers that actually do this. They turn on and off, on and off. And that's accidental learning. They hit the remote and something happens to the remote and they go, oh, it turned the TV on, that kind of thing. The second type is trial and error learning, trying several times before you can make it work. Think about a child or an adult for that matter when they're trying to put a puzzle together. They try it here and then they try it there and they eventually find where it goes. That's called trial and error learning. The third type is imitation. You learn things by watching and copying others. Think about those students that are maybe in color guard that watch how to do a movement and then they copy it. Or maybe dance class. You watch someone do it and then you try to copy it. That's imitation. Toddlers like to do this. One of the things they do, they watch the people that they're around and they try to copy things that they do. So they might try things like you jump down the stairs, I'll try jumping down the stairs. You climb up on top of the bunk bed, I'm going to try to climb up the bunk bed because I watched you. So that's imitation. And then the fourth type is what is happening in a normal classroom. This is formal instruction where the teacher's standing in front of the room and teaching you something. Maybe in a tutoring situation, you're sitting one-on-one and they're teaching you one-on-one. That's direct learning. Now, how do toddlers and preschoolers think? There are 2 things that are specifically difficult for them. One is they over-apply labels. This means that they take something and they assume that all of them are like that. Do you remember when we talked about perception? We talked about how you use your previous knowledge to come up with something. Well, it's the same kind of thing. They over-apply labels. So for example, the table that you're sitting at has a flat surface and legs on the side. So what they do is everything that is flat on the top and legs on the side, they assume is a table. So if they go up to a desk, they'll call that desk a table because it is flat on the top and has legs on both sides. Same kind of thing. An orange, they might look at an orange and they'll call it a ball because it's the color of a ball, it's shaped like a ball. So they over apply labels. That's one of the big problems that they have. They might even do that with people's names. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but they might even do that with, say, mom. Everybody that takes care of them that's a woman is mom, and so they over apply the label. The other thing that they really struggle with concepts of time, and they really struggle with that really not only as toddlers but also as preschoolers. They have a hard time understanding terms like before and after, soon, today, tomorrow, that kind of thing. So if you tell them, we're going to go to Disney World next week, that means nothing to them. They wake up tomorrow and they say, today Disney World? No. Next day Disney World? No. And so they don't understand that concept. If you ask them questions like, we're going to go to the park later. Well, they don't understand what is later. So you can say things like, after we have lunch and you take a nap, we can go to the park. So that's the way that they kind of comprehend the whole time concept. They have to compare it with some other event that they know. There are several different ways that you can help children with their intelligence. One is attention. Gradually develop ability to ignore more sensory information and concentrate on one item of interest. So they have to be able to focus their attention on one thing. The more things that they can block out and distract, the better they're going to learn. So if the TV is on and they're trying to do a puzzle and mom and dad are talking, whatever the case may be, they get distracted. And so you have to be able to help them to be able to focus just on one thing. The next one is memory. Children's memory is not very good of things other than food and people. They usually remember people first and foods that they liked or they didn't like. But children under 3 do not demonstrate a lot of long-term memory. They can't remember what happened 2 days ago or a week ago or things like that. And you can help them with that. One of the best ways you can do that is through memory games. So you can do that through like Old Maid, if you've ever played Old Maid, or where they lay all the cards down and you flip them over. In the beginning you put like 5 cards and then there are 5 matches on the table, and then you help them to find the match that works. And then maybe you keep adding one, every other day or so until they can do a large number of memory. The only other type of memory that they have are things that have strong emotional connections. So things that might be a memory like someone dying or someone or mommy crying, or things that have an emotional impact. They are better at remembering than other things. Their dog dying, that kind of thing. The next type of activity that they are working on is their perception. We talked about perception already. Remember that perception is the information received through their senses. So one of the best things that caregivers can do is take them places and talk through what you're doing. So you go to the grocery store, you're in the produce department, and you pick up, and again you talk about, oh, look at this pretty yellow banana. Oh, this one's green. I don't think I'll get that one yet. It's not quite ripe. And then you talk about, oh, this one is too ripe. It's got brown spots on it, or whatever. You're talking, you're using descriptors, you're explaining, you're counting, you're using all of those things to help them to be able to use their senses. You can let them smell the banana. Can you smell this banana? So they can actually know that the banana smells a certain way when it's ripe. The next one is reasoning. This is problem solving. They have to make decisions. So you can allow them to make simple decisions. You can show them two different vegetables and say, would you like this vegetable or this vegetable for dinner? You can give them an option of, do you want to wear this shirt today or that shirt today? So reasoning can help in that way too. The next one is imagination. Children have wonderful imaginations. In fact, their imagination is stronger now than at any other time in their life. And this imagination can also be bad. because it can actually cause them to be frightened because their active imagination is thinking that there's an alligator under the bed or a monster in the closet or things like that. But you can help them by allowing them to try new things and act out a variety of roles. So for example, when we are in the play school and they're playing in the kitchen, they can act out and try different things, or they can play with the train set and pretend that they're driving the train or a truck, that kind of thing. So we talked about imagination. Creativity is right there with it. Creativity is the production of original ideas, and so them coming up with their own ideas. This is a little bit harder for a toddler than, say, a preschooler or something because they haven't experienced as much, but it naturally comes to them as with children. Think about when you used to play Barbies or Ninja Turtles or whatever you used to play with, and how you were able to create with them and try new things and pretend that you were this and pretend that you were that, and you could just play for hours and hours. If you tried to play Barbies lately, you probably have a harder time being creative, thinking outside the box. Which goes along with curiosity. One of the things you can do with curiosity is ask them lots of questions. Let them ask you questions. Why is this? How is this? What is this? And there's some suggestions down here about that. So one, encourage exploration. Encourage them to try to play and explore. And that kind of goes with this third one down here. Allow free play for children to explore and use their imagination. We do a lot of that in the play school, allowing them to have time to explore and push on the Play-Doh and how does that feel, and making different shapes with the Play-Doh. Also provide multi-purpose toys that you can use for a variety of things. So for example, that pot and that spoon, they could pretend they're cooking dinner with that pot, or they can flip it over and pretend they're playing drums for a group of a band or something like that. And when they're doing those kinds of things, resist the response to stifle their imagination. If they want to make the school bus purple, let them make the school bus purple. Allow them to be as imaginative as they feel comfortable with, and then reward their creativity. Say, "Good job! Look at that! Isn't that pretty? Oh, look at this, Daddy! Look how pretty this is!" Or, "Mommy, look at this one! I can't wait for your mommy to put this on your refrigerator." Whatever that is. So those are all ways that you can improve their intelligence, kind of stretch their imagination. First one we're going to talk about is talking. So talking is part of intelligence, and it depends on these 6 characteristics. One is hearing words. So when you hear through reading a story, talking to the children, whatever it is, they're going to learn how to talk. They're going to be able to articulate. They're going to be able to hear how the sound makes, etc. This next is they have to be interested in talking. Some children just could care less about talking, and so it may not be a top priority. The next one is mental abilities. Some children have more mental abilities than others, and so they can't speak as early because their cognitive ability, their brain activity is not quite as strong. Gender. Who do you think talks first? Girls or boys? Think about that for a minute. Girls. Usually girls are talkers. Girls usually have a larger vocabulary than boys, as a general rule of thumb. The need for speech. If someone does everything for them, they don't need to speak. Why do they need to speak? You're going to give it to me anyway, so I don't need to talk. So that's another, that will depend on whether they talk. And the other is you have to give them interesting things to look at and do so that they want to talk to you. So that's what I encouraged you to do down in the play school. Talk to them. Try to get them communicating with you. Ask them questions. Give them a chance to answer you, and they will. Many times they will. With speech, there's a kind of a set of what usually happens. This isn't completely always true, but somewhat So first at age 2, they begin combining 2 to 3 words. So remember, as infants, they started out, they would say 1 word or 2 words. Then they begin to have more and more vocabulary of single words. And then they start putting words together. Mommy, bye-bye. Daddy, work. Mommy, work. Those would be words that they might put together. Then at 2.5, they begin to pick up some grammar rules. So in the beginning, they might say mouses, or I can't think of another one. But then they begin to pick up some that you add s's when you're wanting plural. Well, they're not going to always be perfect, so they might be incorrect in their grammar rules. So they would continue to say mouses instead of mice. At age 3, if they're still struggling with communication, they should be talking in sentences by the time they're 3. If they're not, school corporations are able to assist children with free speech screening to allow them to get services if they have language or speech issues. But one thing really important for you to focus on is be patient. Do not finish the children's sentences for them if they are stuttering or having issues like that. Next is reading readiness. So one of the things you can encourage them, I like this statement at the very top. It says, children can learn a skill only when they are physically and intellectually ready. So you have to be able to, for example, they have to be able to make their sounds when they're talking. They have to have a need to talk. They have to be intellectually have the ability to talk. So all those go into play. If children are rushed, it can cause frustration and failure for all involved. So reading readiness. So once they're talking, you can begin to do some beginning reading things. How soon they're going to be wanting to read will depend on the child's environment. The more enthusiastic the reader is, the more children will also be enthusiastic about reading, and the more you interact with them while they're reading. Now, we're not saying that this 3-year-old is going to be reading. What we're saying is you're going to begin to do reading readiness. You begin reading readiness as soon as they begin to speak. And little by little, you begin to do some beginning stages of reading. So the first thing, before 3, you just focus on being excited when you read, because the more excited that you are with reading, the more interested they're going to be in listening to the book, staying engaged in the book. And then after 3, you're going to begin to do some letter recognition, and they're going to understand the way letters make up words. And then, so this is a gradual process. Again, we're talking about the before 3 right now, but what you can expect after 3. And we'll talk more about, if you're taking advanced child development, we'll learn more about after 3. One of the benefits of doing reading readiness is they learn about story time and how to handle books, that words and pictures go together. They get to make choices, and they feel accomplished when they finish a book, especially if they start doing some chapter books later. Common vocabulary problems. So we're going to talk about some common vocabulary problems, and then we're going to, at the end of this, the substitute, or we will give you a paper with the vocabulary problems, and you can answer those questions, those 10 questions. So the first one is overextending. Overextending is referring to different objects with the same or similar features by the same name. So this would be similar to what I was saying with overextending the word mom. Everybody that loves me, cares for me, that's a female, must be mom, or grandma, or something like that. So that is overextending, which is a vocabulary problem. The next one is over-restricting, using a general term to mean a specific person. So again, the general term, let's see, so if I have a train here, you can't have a train somewhere else. No, the train is at my house. that would be an example. Or calling calling all dogs George because that's the name of my dog. That would be over restricting. And then word substitution. Word substitution is using a known word in the wrong way because the child just can't remember what the correct word is. So maybe I'm trying to think of the word stool, and I can't think of the word stool, so I call it a chair. Or I'm trying to think of the word couch, and I call it a bed. That would be an example of word substitution because I can't think of the correct word. Sound substitution, using one sound for another, such as a T for a K or a W for an R or something like that. So instead of saying lamb, I can't say lamb, so I say yam. So that would be a sound substitution. And then the last one is hollow phrase, and this is a single word used to mean different ideas at different times. So one example is when you say bye. So you would say bye when daddy leaves, but you would also say bye when you leave, and you say when you see someone else leave the room, you say bye, even though you're not talking to them. So you're just seeing that connection with someone leaving. So those are the 5 common vocabulary problems that you'll get a chance to try some of those in a few minutes. Next is math readiness. Math readiness, so we've talked about speech, then we talked about reading, and now we're going to talk about math. Just like with reading, you have to have and speech, you have to have an interest in this, and you can get them interested in this by using counting or numbers or shapes or colors in everything that you do. Children can explore sizes, shapes, amounts, and proportions long before entering school. You can teach numbers throughout everyday experiences. If you remember, I talked about in infants, I would talk about how I would take some Cheerios on the high chair and I would count them, and they would just hear those sounds. They didn't know anything about counting, but we were just learning numbers in the beginning. If they're looking at the remote, they love to play with the TV remote. So you can point out numbers on the remote. This one says 1, and this one says 2, and point out numbers. You can also point out colors. Colors, again, is part of math, and so you could say, look at the green cucumber. Blocks and puzzles also help with shapes and sorting, and so you can do things like that. You can take, for example, in the play school, you could take the Legos and you could say, let's make a tower out of yellow Legos. And so they would pull out all the yellow Legos and they would put those together. That would be, you're sorting them by yellow. Let children explore their environment to make natural discoveries. So you could be sitting at the doctor's office and you might say, what do we see in this room that's green? And so you would focus on, that would help them to explore and look around and pick up on things, or what shape is that clock over there? And you could talk about that it was a circle. And so different math readiness that you could do in everyday life that would encourage them to learn math. Next, guiding children's learning. And this is really kind of just a general closing for this PowerPoint. One of the ways that you can guide their learning, help them to learn, is give them time and attention. Obviously, that is the best thing we can do for any child, is to give them lots of time and attention. We've talked about that in infancy extensively, and now we're talking about in toddlers. Allow time for them to think. Give them time to think. Give only as much help as the child needs, so let them try it by themselves. and you can help them by turning, say they were doing a puzzle. You could help them, maybe they're having difficulty, and you could just turn the shape of the piece and then let them try again, and that's allowing them to continue thinking. Encourage children to draw their own conclusions. Now that's a little bit harder for toddlers until later in that, but talk about what do you think is going to happen next? And you can really do that a lot in storytelling. Demonstrate how to solve a problem. So you can let them see that you solve problems too. I don't know where this goes. Does this go on the Lego box, or does this go in the dress-up area? And then help them see you're solving problems too. And that kind of goes hand in hand with modeling problem solving. Let them see you do things. Stay positive. Obviously, don't nag on them because they can't do something. Focus on the things they can do instead of the things they can't do. And next, keep explanations simple and at child's level so that it doesn't get too complicated. Don't give them more information than they really need at a given time. Allow children to explore and discover. And then help children understand how the world works. Looking at how things are. Look at the rain in the sky. The rain is going to give water to our flowers and to our animals and things like that, so they can see how the world works around them. And then watch for signs the child has had enough of an activity, and then just stop that activity and start a new activity, or let them go play for a little while if you're trying to teach them something. But try to teach them in fun ways that they're not going to get bored in the first place. The last thing we're going to do, I want you to think about a toy. And on the back of the vocabulary problem, a paper, what I want you to do is to write down a toy that's in the play school. So just think about when you were in the play school, something that your child played with, and some type of toy. And I want you to write that at the top, and then I want you to answer these questions about that toy. Is the toy safe? What makes it safe? What makes it not safe if it wasn't? Is it well made? Is it durable? Does it break easily? Can it hold up to, some of the damage that toddlers do? Is it easy to clean? Can I clean it so that I can sterilize it so we won't pass germs on from one person to another? And does it encourage a child's imagination? Can they be creative with it, or is it not something that they can use their imagination? Is it colorful? What colors is it? What colors is the toy? Can the child handle it well? Is it difficult to hold? Is it too big for them, too little for them? And will the child enjoy it? Did your child enjoy it is probably a better way. And why do you think that the child enjoyed that toy? So there's two things you're going to be doing. You're going to get one of the papers called Common Vocabulary Problems. You're going to answer those, and then you're going to flip it over and evaluate a toy. That's your two jobs that you're going to be doing. Thank you.